Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. May I have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill.
Here.
Vice Chair Feck.
Present.
Commissioner Aldana.
Present.
Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
You.
Commissioner Unander LaBerge.
Here.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. I did not see any written public comment. Has anything come in? No. Okay, great. Okay, that brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. Total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. Those of you who are here to speak on an agenda item, that will come when we talk about your item. I do not have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, that brings me to committee assignment reports. I'm going to start over on my right this week. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Yes, Council, I wasn't able to go to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Unander LaBerge.
Thank you. I had a scheduled conflict and was not able to attend the Arts and Crafts meeting.
Okay, great, thanks. Vice Chair Feck.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend Youth Council this
We're having a
time.
banner
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Aldana.
Neighborhood Advisory Council did not have quorum, so again, we did not meet.
Okay.
But I was busy with other community events yesterday. I think we could talk about it, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yesterday, we helped put together a overview of sidewalk vending, which is becoming to be a problem throughout the city. So it was a very good, well-attended meeting, about 50 people, and city attorney and administration and public health and safety, health department was there to answer all the questions and concerns. Good meeting.
Great.
And then also a fundraiser beginning of the month for with the Santa Barbara East Side Society for to cover the expenses for the Christmas parade. So busy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Clark.
Sadly, I was not able to attend the Street Tree Advisory Committee. I picked up a shift at work because we're incredibly short-staffed. But I did visit all the trees that are on our agenda and gave good thought to them and read our packet. And I'm suggesting in the future, I wouldn't mind if I'm not working, filling in if someone can't make it. And I'm sure you guys wouldn't mind filling in for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
feel free to reach out.
Okay,
I will
great,
too.
thanks. Yeah, maybe that's the one that needs an alternate. Speaking of the ones that do have alternates, there was an IPM meeting this past, a week or so ago, and I was able to attend that, the Integrated Pest Management meeting. We processed a couple of exceptions and just a general discussion. I always learn a lot at those. And then there was a Park Foundation meeting last week, and we primarily discussed revisions to the bylaws, which we now have. And that, I think, takes us out. Commission and staff communications, do we have anything?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the only thing I would share with the entire commission is that tomorrow is our budget presentation to the City Council. It's at 9 a.m. and Chair McGill has agreed to represent the commission at that meeting. You are more than welcome to also attend if you so choose. It's in this chamber.
Yeah, it's always good to weigh in with opinions on when it's budget time. And any ceremonial items?
We do not have any this month.
Okay, great, thanks. Consent items?
Chair McGill, the consent items are your meeting minutes.
Oh,
and,
well, okay, right, okay, sorry. I'm just,
Summary.
yeah, okay, we have the summary of council actions, which is Ortega Park, And the band shell, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, I don't either. Yeah, okay. And then the minutes, and the recommendation is that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of April 26th. Do I have a motion?
I can make a motion that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 26, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, great, thanks. And so we have a motion and a second, all in favor. Now we're going to go to the voting button. And we all forgot to use the request to speak button. All right, we have so moved, and that now brings us to the trees. So I need to recuse myself from the first tree on Crestline Drive because I'm in rather close proximity to that house. So I am turning over to Vice Chair Feck, and I will
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Feck and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove a total of 5. They're all evergreen ash trees located at 1527 Crestline Drive. There's one large ash tree in the front setback and 4 that were planted in the public right-of-way as street trees. The applicant listed a few different reasons for removal, including just a general decline in vigor. The trees had been topped, so it looked like a few decades ago, and they've recovered, but the maintenance was varied. The same pruning was applied to the setback tree as well, so it had just kind of poor structure overall. In addition to that, loss of limb, which can be attributed to the past pruning practice, and then debris accumulation on the roof, specifically for the setback tree. On the application, they did express a desire to replace the street trees and the setback tree if approved. The committee reviewed the trees. They noted, similar to the application, that the trees were in various states of decline, a lot of that attributed to the pruning practice that had taken place several years ago. The same was true for the evergreen ash in the front setback. It was in a little better condition, but structurally wasn't quite as, just not as structurally stable of a tree due to the way it had developed over the years. Overall, they were kind of like determined to be functional. You know, this review with evergreen ash is consistent with similar ones that we've seen, at least from the committee's recommendation, and their strong opinion that this tree doesn't really have a lot of value in the urban forest due to its weedy nature. It germinates readily. The seed travels by wind, and you can find it popping up pretty much all over the place, not just in urban areas, but in natural areas as well. And similar to previous reviews, they had pretty strong opinions that there was value in removing these, all 5 of these trees with replanting of new trees. In discussion for replants, the picture to the left, the one tree is, you can't see it quite as well, but it's really shoehorned there and very tightly between an existing sweet gum and also the driveway, not really a space that we would consider to be replantable in the future. And so after pretty extensive on-site discussion, the committee made a recommendation to approve all the removals on the condition that 3 new street trees be planted back in front of the property, and that also a new setback tree be planted that could achieve 30 feet in height at maturity to offset the existing tree in the setback. During review, they also determined the commission could make the finding that a reasonable or principles of best forest management would be best served by the proposed removal just for the setback tree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Slack?
I have a couple questions for Mr. Slack. You know, this is reminiscent of the tree at the Philbrook House that we discussed last meeting that came to our agenda a couple months ago. And the STACA committee also had a strong opinion that the tree was a nuisance and weedy. And this commission determined that the tree was of some value, and I don't think we really went forward with we didn't really talk about, is the tree outcompeting other species? I know you tried to define the definition of weedy. My problem with it is that the stack has a very strong opinion to the species in general. So if every species, every example of evergreen ash was removed throughout the city, do you know how many trees that would encompass roughly? And do you know the origin of the strong opinion? Are the trees outcompeting? What concrete problems are they causing in our natural environment that we can see?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Clark, it's a good question. We have very few evergreen ash in terms of like public trees that are in our inventory. I don't know what that number is. It's quite a small number. It would be difficult to estimate how many occur on private property, especially trees that would be the size that would be regulated in the setback, and then, of course, those that aren't in the setback, which wouldn't be regulated. It's common throughout the landscape. There's varied opinions on its value in the landscape. You know, in terms of the committee's opinion, you know, there's over a century of experience arboriculturally and also specifically like within native plant communities, and they share that really strong opinion. It's also not uncommon amongst the arboricultural, horticultural community to have the same opinion of the tree. It's difficult for me to say that it, you know, is displacing a certain number of plants or trees, but it is prolific in its ability to grow, and you see it all over the place, again, like both in the urban and the natural areas. But with that said, some people, you know, value it, even though it's, you know, a non-native, you know, very sort of weedy tree, and then a lot of people have really strong opinions that it doesn't have a place in the community anymore. And it's really, you know, it's primarily opinion-based, and that's true of a lot of things. You know, there's a lot of people that really enjoy ornamental plants and trees, and then there's a lot of people that have really strong opinions about native plants and native trees, and you know, I don't know that either of those opinions are necessarily, you know, good or bad.
Thank you. That's part of the crux of my struggle with this tree is the fact that we need more trees right now. We need more canopy. We need more carbon sequestering. So defining something as weedy because it spreads easily and thrives as an environment, you know, yeah, that could be a good thing, but from a different opinion or a strong opinion, that could be a bad thing. So I struggle with that. And I did drive up the street and I was like, wow, that looks really nice, you know, so I struggle with this one. I think those were my questions.
Okay. Commissioner Unander-Luberge.
I have a few questions with regards to the applicant's stated reasons and your assessment of the reasons. They mentioned that there was a 10-foot branch that fell in the yard, and that may not have been the first branch. Did you see any evidence of broken branches on these trees?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Unander-Luberge, there was, you know, like I referenced, it's tough to date when they were topped, but they were topped pretty aggressively, you know, probably 15, 20 years ago, I would say, maybe. There was a little evidence of that. You know, I think anytime, that's why we try not to top trees in town, because anytime you do that, the growth can generally be pretty weak. Those new branches that form can be pretty weakly attached. I can't say I definitively saw a limb failure, but, you know, like evidence of a past limb failure. But in general, the canopies, you know, they weren't horrible, but they weren't great, you know, in terms of overall structure. And that is directly related to the topping that took place. This tree, in general, the species does have a tendency to lose limbs. You know, that would be considered, I think, part of the species profile. But lots of trees also, you know, can lose limbs too. There was, I think it's really just going back to the committee's decision was a lot about the species. And then in terms of the general condition, these were in far worse shape than the previous application in the San Roque neighborhood, where that tree was, you know, kind of an exemplary specimen for, you know, this particular species.
Do you have an explanation to attribute to why these are in bad shape?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Unander LaBerge, I think a lot of it, at least in terms of the street trees, if you were able to get out and walk, the sidewalk's relatively new, so they've been root pruned. There's pretty significant evidence of root pruning over the years. I can't say how many times that's happened, but there's decay that you can see from those old root pruning cuts. That's super, we've talked about that a lot. That's very stressful for trees. And then you couple that with, pretty aggressive pruning and years of recovery as a result of that. I think that is the real driving force as to why the street trees don't look great. And then the setback tree, it does look a little better in terms of it's a little bigger, its canopy's a little bit more full. It's had less site work done. The root damage has probably been more or less over the years.
Okay, so then if we're understanding that the ones that are on the street are not in good shape, not healthy, why are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater and throwing out the one that's in the setback?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Unander LaBerge, I think, again, in terms of the committee's review, their strong opinion of this particular species made it relatively easy for them to make a recommendation to include them all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see anybody else with questions or comments. I think we can go to, I do have one speaker slip. Andrew Bloom, if you want to come up and address the commission. You'll have 2 minutes, and there'll be a timer on that screen that will tell you when to go.
Okay. Perfect. First off, thank you very much for the consideration today. I'm a little bit nervous speaking in front of all of you, so I'll try to keep it together. But the main reason why we requested this, or fielded this, was the big branch that fell. So that was a safety concern. This is where our kids play quite often. It definitely spooked us in that sense. The second request really comes from damage that's happening. So when we bought this house, we did buy it because we love the yard, the trees. It's beautiful, mature. I agree with that comment saying driving down the neighborhood, it just looks beautiful, and I agree with that. But we bought the house, we did our inspections, and we have roots in the sewer line. It's also causing damage to the driveway where they recently replaced the driveway because of the setback tree had done damage. And additionally, it's very close to our flat roof, which hasn't held up very well in the rain. So there's a lot of drainage problems that we're having because of just the overall landscape of the house that we're working to solve. So those are really the main concerns. We definitely want to replant, and we are aligned with the recommendation that was provided. So that's all.
Great, thank you so much. That was great.
Can I ask just
any
a
other-
short question?
Yeah,
Did
go
you
for it.
already do the sewer repair or not?
We just cleared it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or are we prepared to make a motion? Commissioner Unander LaBerge.
Thank you. Okay, so maybe you can explain, when we had Mr. older gentleman, this was in the March meeting, and Julius, I don't know if you remember him, and he had a property with a tree that was on the corner of his property that was kind of destroying the retaining wall. And we declined to allow him to remove that, even though it was pretty clear it was damaging the retaining wall. What's the difference?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Unander LaBerge. I think, again, we get back to the same kind of conversation about whether you prefer ornamental trees or native trees. For the longest time in the arboricultural industry, there's been what we would simply refer to as appraisal, like tree appraisal values. A direct result of that is classifying species in terms of their value. And so you could say it's science-based, but it's also, there's always some subjectivity into those things. And when you look at certain tree species, they're held in much higher regard. You can go back to just oak as a general thing, right? Everybody loves oak trees. Some people can't even tell you why, but it's this mystical, species of tree. And so the Deodar cedar at Julius's property is a very valued specimen landscape tree, whereas the committee and several people within the industry have a much different opinion of the evergreen ash.
All right, I don't see any other speakers. Are we prepared to make a motion? Sure, go for it.
So they're going to be replaced with what type of tree again?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Aldana, the conditions to replace with 3 new street trees, the current designated street tree is carrotwood for that street. It's a pretty functional street tree species. I think that we would probably move forward with that without like reviewing and maybe modifying the designation. And then the other condition for the setback tree was to replace it with a tree that can achieve 30 feet at height and maturity. So in those instances, we just dialogue with the applicant and make sure that the species that they're planning on planting satisfies that requirement. So it'd be a total of 4 trees in lieu of the 5 being proposed for removal, and then making reference to the tree that was super close to the driveway just not being a viable planting location. Putting 4 street trees back just didn't make practical sense.
Got it. And what's the timeline?
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Aldana. So the commission action kind of hangs out there in perpetuity until such time that the applicant requests a permit from us. Once we issue a permit, we try to have everything wrapped up within 60 days. So that's an ideal time frame. That doesn't work always. So, you know, sometimes we grant extensions, but in a perfect world, we would have it all wrapped up in, you know, a couple months' time.
And wrapped up means cut and replanted?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Clark?
Just a quick question. Is part of the street trees determination, the STAT committee's determination to agree to the removals based on the cost to the city of repeated pruning? I mean, my assumption is the applicant pointed out a safety issue to you, so you're going to put these trees on your list of trees to prune more frequently. Does STAT take that cost of pruning into consideration when they make the removals? I wish I had been there this month. I wasn't.
Vice Chair Feck and Commissioner Clark, it was a great meeting. You were missed. But anyway, so one limb failure doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to increase pruning. And I think, again, in this instance, it had a lot more to do with what we've talked about previously is much more about the species. I think this decision was easier for them than the previous examples of evergreen ash, just given the fact that the trees were in lower quality in terms of like their overall health than previous evergreen ash trees. So this decision was easier, but that really wasn't a factor.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other speakers on our list, so are we prepared to make a motion? Does somebody want to do that? Okay, I can make a motion that we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removals on the condition that the applicant plant 3 new designated street trees and a new tree in the setback that can achieve a minimum height of 30 feet at maturity, pursuant of Santa Barbara Municipal Code 152409A, on the principles of good forest management.
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a vote? Okay, that one's been approved. We can get Kathy, I think, now.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is a request to remove 3 evergreen ash trees. These are all located within the public right-of-way. The applicant's requesting removal of these trees primarily due to redevelopment of the property. similar to like a recent review. There's some site improvements that involve realignment of the driveway. So the driveway is going to be, the new driveway proposed will go straight into the existing facade of the garage. So the old driveway would go away and the new driveway would go straight into the garage perpendicular to the street. The proposed driveway is 13 feet. There's barely 13 feet between these existing trees. And in the application, they indicated that they had consulted with some private arborists who advised that even if you could shoehorn the driveway in there, that it would be subject to continued disruption, leading to root pruning and just kind of continuous repairs. So they went ahead and submitted an application to remove all 3 trees. The committee reviewed the trees. They noted they were in fair shape overall. They've been reasonably maintained. They are under overhead utility lines, so they're routinely pruned for utility clearance by subcontractors for California Edison. Similar to the lengthy discussion we had for the previous item, the species being evergreen ash was seen as non-beneficial to the urban forest. The committee came to a relatively quick consensus that they supported the removals and the development of the property was practical. They did, however, determine that replacement trees were necessary. The applicant did not express a desire to plant new trees on the property at the time of the application submittal, but the committee, again, determined that it was really important to kind of offset the loss. So they, after review, the committee determined or recommended approval of the 3 evergreen ash trees on the condition that 2 new trees be planted on the property. They could be planted either in the right-of-way or in the front setback and achieve a minimum height of maturity at 25 feet. And the parkway planting, just for further clarification, would not be considered a city street tree. So these trees would be the property owner's responsibility.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a couple.
Did you hit your request?
No, I did not.
Ah.
No, I didn't.
1 month and we lose it. All right. Commissioner Clark.
Just a couple of questions. I noticed on the application that the applicant said that we are in the final permitting stage of our application. I thought we've been trending towards people coming to us for tree removals before they got to the final stages of permitting. Did something happen in this case that we didn't follow that protocol?
And Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, I don't believe that that's the case. What our goal is to make sure that final project design approval is not obtained prior to the tree removal portion. So I think this was kind of a funky one, but we're still in line. So there's really no missteps here.
And my only other question, they also noted that arborists, and then you stated the arborist gave them some reports that the trees wouldn't be too viable after root pruning required for the driveway modifications. Are there any arborist reports that you're aware of supporting that?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Feck, I believe those were just like verbal communications between the applicant's representative and the arborist, whoever they contacted with.
It's kind of weird coming in. Any other questions? Okay, I have one, and it's, this is a bit awkward because, of course, I legitimately was not privy to the last conversation, and I got a one-word nod on what the outcome was. But this evergreen ash, and I apologize if I'm now just about to repeat something that just happened. But this evergreen ash keeps coming up, and it seems to, and obviously we're not arborists up here, and I can get behind the argument that not all trees are created equal, but it seems like the evergreen ash, we seem to be getting into a place really over the last few months where we're having this conversation more and more and more. And most time we agree but we don't always agree. And I'm wondering where it leads, and I'm wondering how decisions are made about the relative value or lack of value of canopy trees. And I guess I'm thinking that maybe it's worth a conversation even with the street tree committee or with yourself at an appropriate time in terms of how we manage that. And really what I'm concerned about here, I don't have an axe to grind one way or other on evergreen ash. I don't know enough to do so, quite honestly, but I am concerned about where it goes next. I mean, you don't need to get too far into next door Bel Air or Ed Hat to see the eucalyptus vigilantes strike up. And, you know, where does that go? So if one tree effectively is put in the naughty corner, what's the next tree to go into the naughty corner and why? And how do we manage that? And I know that's bigger than this particular tree, but it's over the course of the last 6 months, it's been starting to, I don't know, make me a little nervous. Sorry.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think if you look at and some of you have been on the commission for, quite a while now, and the same is true and considerably even longer for several of the committee members. This is pretty atypical, and this is exclusive to a species. So I think I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, but they've determined that they feel really strongly about this species. And I think if you look at previous reviews of even eucalyptus species and other species that may not be held in high regard, typically they're staunch defenders of. So I think this is pretty exclusive, and really that's, I think, the best way to kind of say it in terms of, this doesn't snowball into all trees will now be removed from the community. I think that this specific species has been isolated for rational reasons, and we talked at length with the previous item about that this is not, exclusive just to the committee. There's a lot of people that share this opinion, but there's a lot of people that don't. The committee's, kind of decided to take a stand on this one particular species, but I don't think that in any way has any impact on any other species that, comes through on an application.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because I mean, we seem to be having a run on them. And that's maybe a little bit of what's feeding my concern. Does anybody have any additional questions? Okay. If not, I will turn it to public comment. I don't have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, great, thank you. With that, I will turn it to discussion and a motion as appropriate.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee, that we approve the removals on the condition that the applicant replace with 2 trees, either in the parkway or setback, that can achieve a minimum height of 25 feet at maturity at 701 Westmont Drive.
I'll second. Any further discussion? Yep, we are ready for a vote. Are you there? Okay, so moved. All right, and now we are on Los Olivos, North Alisos, not Olivos. Street.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I'm happy to report there's no more evergreen ash for
Hopefully not
review
next month
today.
either.
And then, but the next item is 625 North Aliso Street. The applicant's requesting 2 coast redwoods be removed from the public right-of-way. So these technically are street trees. The applicant listed concerns with the long-term mature potential size of the trees. They referenced that they purchased the property and the trees were already in place. And then just the continual utility pruning that the trees are subjected to. They do have a very vertical growth habit, so their tendencies to continue growing up, which subjects them to pretty frequent pruning from the overhead utility lines. The committee reviewed the trees. They noted they were in really good health, not in the best spot, again, because of the vertical growth habit. Long-term, some of their commentary was that they're really probably not right tree, right place kind of situation. In review, reluctantly, I think they felt like they noted removal was probably the most practical approach in this situation, but that the trees should be offset with a new tree. The designated street tree is jacaranda. While on site, we kind of looked at the neighboring trees. There's, kind of a rare tree called a soapberry that can get to pretty decent size right next to the property and kind of sprinkled around on the street. Those were doing much better, had much more of a canopy, more of a shade tree sort of appearance, and not, as detrimental in terms of like their commingling with the overhead utility lines. After review, the committee made a recommendation to approve the removal of the coast redwoods on the condition the applicant plant a new designated street tree, like a 15-gallon, which would be 15-gallon jacaranda, and provide the watering necessary for its establishment.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, because there was one tree that was being topped, but there's so many trees in town that are being topped now. At one point, we're going to be chopping a lot of trees down pretty soon, and maybe a new business we could start. I would like to start a conversation of finding a way to do underlying utilities, put the electrical in ground. So it may sound funny, but
No.
it's. We're a Tree City, USA, and all the trees are hacked. We should be tree hacked, USA. I'm paying more attention to trees, and it's unbelievable how many trees are hacked. So I just wish it's not going to get any better either. So that was just my comment. You mentioned that jacaranda is the tree for alisos. Is there a specific color? Because if it's purple, I haven't seen any. I live around the corner from there.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, it's not uncommon for the street tree designation to not match up with the existing street tree species. So the first iteration of that list was in 1977. There's a lot of street trees in town, some densely populated streets that predate the creation of that list. So that's something that we see from time to time where there's not necessarily a lot of the species on street that matches up with the designation. So in this case, it would be relatively new. And soapberry, the tree that's kind of dominant on that street, is something that you can't really find anymore anyway. So even if we would like to continue its use, it's just not available. And jacarandas are predominantly always purple.
And then how many years would you predict before that tree gets hacked?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, I think it would really depend on how quickly it established. It looks like they're probably doing that pruning at, maybe 14, 15 feet, 20 feet. I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't remember it super well. We'll say 20 for the sake of conversation. It could be a decade before the tree gets that big. I think, I kind of jumped over it, but when you look at I did reference the vertical growth habit of the redwood. It's not a wide spreading tree. Whereas the jacaranda is, so you start to get that actual shade. Coast redwood, even giant ones, aren't what we would really consider shade trees. So you're not getting, the reduction in greenhouse effect and things like that other shade trees provide. And that was some of the conversation that took place amongst the committee members when looking at this specific tree. I think we're a super old community and everything, the utility lines are overhead and it's going to be, everybody would love them to be underground, but it's going to be a really, really long time, if ever, when that does happen. There's a lot of limitations and when you really look at even trying to do that. So I think for us, it's about trying to find a tree that can work well, under those lines, where it's not detrimental long-term and still get all of those good benefits that a shade tree can provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I've got a couple, if no one else. I'm sorry, I missed you. Go ahead.
When the Street Tree Advisory Committee was visiting the site, did they take into consideration the fact that the owner is also removing 2 trees from his backyard?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, no.
Okay, I guess I have 2 questions, and then we'll go to public comment. You answered the question about the soapberry tree. They're not available. So my one question is, why a one replacement for 2 removals, and versus a 2 for 1, a like for like? And my second question is, when I stood on the street, there's a lot of mature trees there that are basically enmeshed in the power lines. And I was just wondering what the difference between this one was that makes that a problem to be in the lines versus all the surrounding trees that don't seem to have a problem being in the utility lines.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, when you look at the parcel, it's quite narrow, and when you look at the planting site and the neighboring ficus trees that are in the parkway directly beside the parcel at 625, one shade tree, a canopy tree that spreads is more than enough for the space, and that was the committee's decision. And so, in Tree Talk, the redwood has X current growth, so it grows like a telephone pole. Mm-hmm. And a D current tree like a jacaranda, or most shade trees in town, they kind of are wide spreading. They don't have like that real strong central stem, sort of that telephone pole kind of look. That makes them much more like malleable, I guess, when they start to interact with, utility lines. And a lot of it, like the dark ones in the picture, those are communication lines, and the trees just commingle with those. They're not carrying voltage, and it's the reality of living in an old town where you're trying to, find a balance between like watching cable TV and having like nice shaded, cool streets.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And those seem like pretty small redwoods. Are they going to get much bigger?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, they have potential to get significantly larger. But again, you're never really going to achieve like canopy. You're never really going to get shade. You're just going to, the trunk diameter is going to increase, and that canopy is going to always remain quite narrow and small.
Okay, thanks. I'm not seeing my screen light up, so I'll go to public comment. I don't have any slips. Anybody online?
No.
Okay, great, thanks. So with that, I will go to discussion and/or motion. Don't all speak up.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and that we approve the removals with the condition that the applicant plant a 15-gallon replacement street tree and provide watering at 625 North Aliso Street.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All right, I hate to see redwoods removed, but we there? And it passes. All right, Torino.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove a Brazilian pepper from the public right-of-way. So this also is a street tree. The applicant expressed a few different reasons for removal, decline in vigor. They also referenced previous limb failure, associated with storm damage. They're also doing pretty comprehensive property improvements, including landscape improvements. So it was kind of a nexus to evaluate the tree for removal. The committee reviewed the tree. They noted it was in fair health. One side of the tree was declining a bit. There was some decay, present at the base from previous root pruning. They kind of stewed about the value of the existing tree versus, moving forward with like a new tree. And the applicant did express a desire to plant a new tree, specifically a ginkgo, which is the designated street tree. And there's several great examples nearby of pretty well-developed ginkgos. After review, the committee made a recommendation to approve the removal of the Brazilian pepper tree on the condition the applicant plant a designated street tree as proposed on the application.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Vice Chair Feck?
Is the address Modoc or is it Torino?
It's Torino.
Okay, because this says, okay.
Yeah.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Feck, the address is Torino Drive. The owner may be located on Modoc Road, or the applicant.
Yeah, it's on Torino, just past Palermo, yeah. Any questions? Alrighty, I will go to public comment if there are no questions. I don't have any slips. Do we have anybody?
We do not.
Okay, thanks. With that, I would do a motion or discussion.
You said it's in fair health, correct? It's
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I would say their consensus was fair to poor.
I noticed driving up the street, there was a lot of trees that were kind of funky looking. Did you notice that too? Anyone else?
No, and I'm down that street all the time.
Just wondering if there's prevailing winds, like going one way or the other, because they all kind of seemed like they're, no? Okay.
I didn't notice, but. All right, well, if, I'm prepared to make a motion. I hate to do it because I just get uncomfortable when we start removing a lot of mature trees. And it's kind of a cool shape, but I will make a motion that we approve the removal of the Brazilian pepper on 3728 Torino Drive on the condition that the applicant plant a new street tree as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll go to a vote. All right, it passes. And the final tree is Vista Del Mar.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the last item for review is the request to remove a Canary Island date palm. Oddly enough, this is technically a setback tree. Despite the fact that it's spilled over the sidewalk, it did originate behind the sidewalk in the setback of the property. This was a kind of a unique one. Before we reviewed it, we actually talked to transportation about strategies in the event that it was determined of value, and we came up with like workarounds in terms of like sidewalk modification, so the sidewalk could be pushed towards the curb, in the event that the committee and the commission determined the tree was of value. We looked at the tree on site. The committee, they noted it was in good health. It hadn't been pruned in years and years and years. I think the consensus was where the palm originated, and then you've got all the English ivy and water and things like that over time, the adventitious root system above ground just sort of like consumed the sidewalk. The applicant, by their own admission, stated that the palm naturally germinated on its own, and they just kind of let it grow. The evidence was pretty strong. The committee also agreed that it clearly looked like a volunteer. Despite its overall health, there was consensus amongst the members that taking those steps to make modifications to the right-of-way and the costs incurred in this specific example didn't warrant like tree retention. And they also determined that based on the fact that it clearly had germinated on its own and the slope of the property was difficult for new trees, that there was no need for a replacement tree. And after review, they voted to approve the removal as proposed with no conditional replacements.
Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Commissioner Aldana.
Is there street trees on Vista del Mar?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, there are a few. It's an area that has a much lower number of existing street trees. It's something that we talked about on site as a good priority to look at, in the coming years in terms of replanting efforts. I think we would have to revisit the existing designation. I don't have it in front of me, but mostly what is planted on that loop are eucalyptus species, which are too large for that really narrow parkway along Vista del Mar.
I guess, I don't know if this question, I'll go with another Bears, Commissioner, and then I'll ask mine.
So timing-wise, it's nesting season right now. And not that I'm supporting nesting rats, but I'm just wondering, do birds nest in something like this? Like some of the other trees, it'd be pretty easy to see if there was a nest or anything. But right now, if you guys take this down, what else are you taking down with it?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Unander LaBears, it's a great question. I think others could speak to the diversity of wildlife that a Canary Island pine or palm can support, but it's pretty vast. We have very little, it's the same with all the pruning and stuff that goes on in town. We have very little control over private operation. Our permit has specific language that we worked with the city attorney's office on it, specific to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the need to not disturb nests. So we do that, but outside of that, we can't really restrict somebody from obtaining a permit. I think that it's our hope that, everybody would do everything in their power to make sure there weren't, active nests, or that they waited until it was, outside of nesting season. But aside from the language on the permit, if somebody requested a permit, we would issue the permit and just hope that they acted in good faith based on the language in the permit.
Thank you. I guess my question, well, I'll say, I stood on it for a while and just marveled at the number of birds I was watching over my head. So it definitely has bird life in it. And it's a gorgeous tree. In kind of an awkward spot. My question is really around the recommendation not to put a contingent replacement. We've had a lot of discussions over my years here with trees that are volunteers, and historically, in my experience, something being a volunteer doesn't really matter in terms of whether or not it's a candidate for replacement. So, so my question is, if that's the case, then why not require a replacement for this tree? It's a huge tree. It's not a canopy tree, but it's actually a quite beautiful tree.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, some of the rationale, again, from the committee was that it germinated on its own, but it also wasn't a canopy tree. Not to say that there's not benefits to palms and that they can't do lots of good things, but in terms of, the environmental benefits, and we've talked about them, the environmental benefits of a palm, even a Canary Island date palm, it's meager in comparison to what a shade tree can do in terms of actual shading and carbon sequestration and those things. And that was just the consensus of the committee in this specific instance. If the commission determined that a replacement was necessary as part of the approval process, certainly that could happen.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldana?
Yes, is there any other Canary Island date palms on that block?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, I don't believe so from recollection, but I wouldn't say definitively that there's not.
So there's no other trees, no other date palms, but it germinated on its own?
It's been around for a while.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, yeah, this is a tree that also has a propensity for popping up all over the place. Bird carries a seed, new palm tree somewhere else.
Got it.
Okay, we have Director Zachary would like to speak.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think probably a good next step would be at some point, when staff has had a chance to evaluate this street and talk about the options to increase canopy throughout the street, which would be a subject of a different Parks and Recreation Commission agenda item. What you have before you is a tree to be removed for a number of reasons, and if you could focus your discussion on that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't think we've actually strayed particularly far in this instance. But point taken. Any additional questions? If not, I will open it up to comment. I don't have a slip. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any discussion, motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion
All right.
to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to remove the Canary Island date palm, which is beautiful, at 18 Vista Del Mar.
I'll second.
All right. With that, I was going to actually suggest that we ask for a contingent canopy tree, but I'll go with the motion as it stands. All in favor? Okay, we pass. And that takes us out of our trees. Thank you very much, Mr. Slack. That takes us to our director's report.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we have a few things to bring to your attention this month. First of all, Arbor Day, which is celebrated every single year. And it's a program that our urban forestry folks take to heart. We've worked for many years hosting tree planting events at elementary schools, and we take, requests for tree planting events. The tree planting events give us an opportunity to educate children about the importance of trees and encourage them to take an active role in caring for the environment. This year, we had events at Adams Elementary, Cold Spring School, and the Riviera Ridge School. So that's children from kindergarten through 6th grade. Also got a presentation from our forestry staff before they help plant some new trees on the campus. Santa Barbara Beautiful, we've partnered with for many, many years on Arbor Day, and then obviously the acquisition of trees that get planted on our city streets. They covered the cost of the new trees, and they also donated a copy of the book, The Boy Who Grew a Forest, to each school's library. What isn't in your director's report that I'd also like to share with the commission is the department received the Growth Award from the Arbor Day Foundation for our dedication to urban forestry, and it's given to communities that have been recognized as a Tree City USA for more than 40 years, of which we are one of the few in the country. The commission spends very valuable time evaluating many tree applications, and that speaks to the long-standing commitment the community's had to its urban forest, which really dates back to the 1800s. And what we have today is really tremendous compared to many communities. And I would just also add what we also have today, which is something that we grapple with, is a maturing urban forest and the need to plant for the future. for any number of reasons, urban development affecting our tree health, climate change affecting our tree health, the opportunity to think ahead, what do we want these streets to look like in 30 years when the trees that are planted today will be more mature. So I wanted to share that little bit of extra information with you. And then also let you know that May is National Water Safety Month. It's held each year to observe an observance of opportunities to prevent drowning incidents and keep individuals safe in and around water. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, drowning is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4, and the second leading cause of death, an unintentional injury death for children ages 5 to 14 after motor vehicle crashes. So this year, to combat these statistics, the department is providing low-cost water safety programs to teach children ages 6 months to 17 years a range of water safety practices, including basic swimming skills, ocean safety, and how to respond in an emergency. We've made group swim lessons available at a resident rate of $50 for 8 30-minute lessons, which is roughly $6 per lesson. Each participant will also get a free summer swim pass, good for 1 adult and 2 children, to enjoy the recreation swim time that we have at Los Baños. And then children age 7 to 17 who already know how to swim will be encouraged to attend the Junior Lifeguards program, which is a really popular and a very valuable program for teaching ocean safety, hazard identification, first aid, and surf life-saving. Scholarships are, as with many of our programs, available, as well as a limited supply of swimsuits for families in need. I think we just purchased 200 swimsuits using grant funds. We're also going to host a second reduced-cost lifeguard training course over Memorial Day, so that's coming up, to increase the number of community members with life-saving skills. A typical course costs around $200, and we are offering a multi-day training for $50. People that participate will leave with American Red Cross certifications in lifeguarding, CPR, AED, and first aid. And depending on the demand, and right now it's high, we might add a third reduced cost course. So this again speaks to, we live in a coastal community. We have members of our community that learning how to swim may save their life. They may not go on to compete in the Olympics, or they may not use their swimming schools on a regular basis, but when someone doesn't know how to swim and is faced with a situation where they may have to have that skill, we play a significant role in the community providing that service. Then lastly, just looking ahead to the next couple of meetings, we hope to be able to give you an update on our various capital projects. Things are moving along. Nothing happens overnight, but we do have milestones that we reach, and so we'd like to be able to share those with the commission. And then in July, we have the annual advisory committee reports and the election of chair and vice chair for the next year. Happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
All right, thanks. Any questions? Vice Chair Feck.
Can you just say the name of that award you guys got for the Arbor? What was it called?
It's called the Growth Award.
Growth Award.
And it's actually something our marketing coordinator, Erin Blasey, identified that we could apply for, and so we were awarded. I neglected to also add, if you travel around town, you will see the really cool-looking Tree City USA signs that have shown up in various places. We've had them for a while. We work closely with our Public Works Department. Nathan Slack worked closely with our Public Works Department to find key locations to put those signs up, which gives us another opportunity to educate the public about the importance of trees.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks. And I think that just, highlights the importance of what we do here every month and the real importance of what the tree committee does and what the staff do. I mean, it's easy to just kind of roll your eyes and say, oh God, here we're going to do another tree application, but it's an important part of what the community is, and as it evolves and as you say matures, the conversations get different and perhaps more complicated. And I appreciate that. Appreciate that comment. That's very, very real. So it's an interesting perspective. But congratulations on the award. I mean, Well-deserved. All right, I think that's that for the director's report, and that takes us to Parma Park.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I would like to introduce Monique O'Connor, who is our open space planner for the department. I think she's coming on almost a year with our department, so she will be giving the report to you today.
Welcome, thank you.
Chair Miguel and Commissioners, happy to be here with you all today to present to you on the Parma Park Sustainable Trails Project. So just real quickly, a brief history on Parma Park. It is a 200-acre open space park, and it was gifted to the city in 1973. In 2000, In 2000, the Parma Park Trust was established to provide funds to support the preservation and maintenance of the park. The Sustainable Trails Project is fully funded by the Parma Park Trust. And Parma Park itself is used for a variety of recreational activities. We have hikers, equestrian users, paragliders, and outdoor education groups that frequently visit this park. Parma Park also is home to a unique and diverse vegetation community that provides habitat to a wide variety of flora and fauna. Some of the vegetation communities that we have on site, we have grassland, oak woodland, riparian corridors, scrubland, chaparral, and a historic olive grove. So the existing trail system at Parma Park lacks a strategic design, as many of the trails were actually started as old cattle trails. The existing trails also are quite steep, require a lot of maintenance, and cause a fair amount of soil loss over time, particularly in the rain events and the heavy winter that we had this past season. So that is what prompted us to come to the Sustainable Trails Project, and the goals of that project are to improve and expand the trail system, provide safer conditions for users, increase access, create lasting trails that require minimal maintenance, and preserve the natural resources that we have at Parma Park. So the project timeline, project preparation started back in 2017, as well as project design. We carefully worked through the design and got it right where we wanted, right before we started the build of Phase 1. Phase 1 is where we are right now, and I'm happy to report that as of earlier today, Phase 1 is actually complete. So happy to share that with you all. So we'll continue to move forward through Phase 2 coming later this year, and then Phase 3. So now I'll walk you through what went into each phase of the project. So project preparation. We started with outreach to the community. We had an on-site meeting held in March 2017. We also had a project survey that was available to the public in 2017, and we received 115 responses to that survey. Also leading up to it, we had a handful of environmental studies done on site to be sure that we were doing the project in the best way possible and lessening our environmental impact in every way that we could. So we had a biological survey report done, an arborist report done, and a Phase 1 archaeological resources report. Now getting to the project design. The design was put together by a trails expert with the Santa Barbara County Trails Council. The existing trails were assessed for entrenchment, grade, outslope, and water diversion feature condition. The findings of these assessments, along with the collected community insight and environmental resources reports, were used to design the sustainable trail system that we are now building out. And here is our resulting project map. Parma is a little bit of a funny shape, so sorry for how that presents there, but that is where we landed with our trail system. So Phase 1 of the project took place in the western one-third of Parma Park. You can see that close-up view in both of those figures. And a nice feature, real exciting feature that we have that was part of Phase 1 is about a half mile of an accessible trail that you can see outlined in red in that right-hand figure. So now to walk you through some of the behind-the-scenes action shots of Phase 1 work out there. So I'll speak to the second photo from the left-hand side. That is a new bench that was installed at a nice viewpoint out there, and that is also right off of that accessible loop trail. and it has a companion space, so someone that comes there with a wheelchair or other mobility aid can sit in a space right next to the bench and enjoy the viewpoint as well. I'll speak also to the last photo on the right-hand side. This was an exciting part of the trail. You'll see our mini excavator coming through there, and that was a section where we had to go through some oak trees and to work towards, to use the mitigation measures recommended in the arborist report, and to lessen our impact to the greatest extent feasible. We walked the mini excavator through that zone by using mulch underneath plywood to lessen its weight and dissipate the compaction created by that machine. A few more photos to share here with you all. Those first two photos on the left-hand side are the compaction process that we used for the accessible trail. It needs to be firm and stable for mobility aids to be able to utilize it. Next photo, third one there, some temporary signage going up on site. And the last two photos were some excitement we had out on site. Those are two Western Pacific rattlesnakes that we actually had a specialist from CDFW come out and relocate on site for us. They made their home in a rock pile that was right in the middle of a new trail alignment. So he scooted those over just a few hundred feet on site so we could continue our project. So now we have to progress into phase 2, which is the eastern 2/3 of Parma Park. Plan to start that later this year, probably in October. And then we have the restoration work that comes after all this. So this is called phase 3, but really to clarify, we actually have started some of this work in the phase 1 area. We blocked off decommissioned trails that will no longer be used, and we're allowing the vegetation to naturally fill back in there through passive restoration. Also, this second photo there, you'll see some Dudleyas that we transplanted to a decommissioned trail alignment during the construction of some new trail out there. So those were right in the alignment, and the trails crews dug those out and planted them in a decommissioned trail, and I just checked on them today. They're actually taking quite well. The top photo there, we did some invasive removal in preparation for restoration as well out there. And then that lower photo there, you can see some castor bean seed head removal that we did in tandem with that. And with that, thank you all for having me today. And commissioners, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Commissioner Clark, and then I have a question. No,
You said Commissioner Clark.
I did, but you first and then I'll go.
Okay. I was going, because you said me. Oh, I just, who did your trail work? Was it city staff or was it Sage? Did you contract it out?
Yes, Sage Trail Alliance partnered with Seguro Corporation, did the build of the trail.
I guess I have one question and sort of a pseudo question comment. The one question is, near the accessible trail, is there any provision or ability for a specific accessible parking?
That is a good question, Chair Miguel and Commissioners. We do not have a specific accessible parking place that was added as a part of the project. However, the accessible path extends fully to the pavement, so it's accessible from the available street parking spaces on El Cielito.
Okay. And then just, would you comment briefly a little bit more on the invasive plant removal, since I know that was a topic of discussion at the last IPM meeting and has and will probably continue to garner some publicity?
Sure, yes, happy, Chair Miguel and Commissioners, happy to speak to the invasive plant removal that occurred. So the process that we did out there, and this all started with going to the IPM committee, requesting an exemption to use herbicide partnered with our mechanized removal. So we used Roundup Custom out there, which is approved for both upland and riparian use. And we did the cut and paint treatment method. So we targeted woody invasives, which were primarily olive trees and Peruvian pepper trees out there. And on the fresh cut, we applied just with a paintbrush, a coat of herbicide to prevent that tree from coming back in that space. During that process, no large mature trees were removed. It was really only trees that were volunteers or had suckers that came back from trees that were previously removed. And that will help our restoration. That will be focused in the Phase 1 area coming later this year to succeed and have less competition with invasives out there.
Okay, thanks very much. And I believe the next, I don't know if it's a special meeting, but there's an upcoming IPM meeting that will actually be a site meeting at Parma.
Yes, that's true, and we'll be walking through the Phase 1 area all together.
All right. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, on the 200 acres, I know it's up in the canyons, mountains, but is there any type of restroom?
Chair Miguel and Commissioner Aldana, there is no restroom facility at Parma Park. It is an open space park and therefore doesn't have the traditional facilities that other built-up parks do have.
Okay. No other questions? Just say thank you. It's a beautiful park, and I haven't been up there in a while, so I look forward to getting up there and seeing what it looks like with the restoration work.
Commissioner McGill and, Chair McGill and Commissioners, if I could just add, it sort of got lost in a little bit, is we are only able to do this work because we have trust funds to do it. So, when we talk about the work that we do throughout our park system, as the commission is very well aware, we are using our dollars as wisely as possible, and often don't get to do all the things that we want to do to make our parks safe, accessible, and sustainable. In this case, we enjoy the support of the Parma Park trustees. We have been meeting with them over the years. We meet with them every year. They get a work plan from us every year for what we do to maintain the park, so basic maintenance. And then they also committed the funding for this project. So the actual construction, as noted in your staff report, is close to $500,000 to make these trails sustainable. And it's a long time coming. We have areas that once decommissioned will make the trail system more safe for everybody that uses it. And it's used by pedestrians, it's used by equestrians. It's one of those last remaining open spaces where equestrians can access a park space. And it's also been the site of where we've actually lost a lot of vegetation. When we had the Tea Fire, for example, in 2008, 99% of the park burned practically. So in addition to supporting this type of work, the trust has supported sort of the rejuvenation of this park. In a perfect world, we've had a few more trust funds for some other spaces, and it would enable us to really do things for the benefit of the entire community.
Thank you very much. And great, well, thank you very much for your report. All righty, that takes us to, we have no old business, so that takes us to new business, which is a training session.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we have Sarah Gorman, who is the city clerk, and Graciela Reynoso, who is a HR supervisor, that are going to do this presentation for you.
Thank you and welcome.
Hello, Chair McGill and Commission. It's wonderful to see you. I'm Sarah Gorman. I'm the City Clerk Services Manager, and I've seen you in your interviews over the years. Well done. And I'm here with Graciela Reynoso, Human Resources Manager. And we are here to do a brief training, and we are going around to a number of the boards and commissions to do the same training. We're going to all of the city charter commissions and to a number of the design review boards and a few other boards as well. So you guys are getting the same pitch that we're giving to a lot of boards. We're not pointing out any particular issues with you, but all the items that we're talking about really apply to all the boards and commissions. So we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end, and if issues come up as we go through this, feel free to jump in. So I'll speak for a bit, and then Ms. Reynoso will speak, and we'll switch a bit. So we're going to talk about advisory group, AKA board and commission, purview, communication, and conduct topics. So we'll talk about the roles of boards and commissions. We'll talk about communication, conduct, and decorum. Talk a little bit about anti-harassment training. We say a half hour is booked for this. It will probably be a lot quicker, so depending on questions. You guys don't need to have the mayor come. Some people do, but you don't. So you just have his picture for a moment. Have him in your head telling you to stay on topic. All right. So talking a bit about boards and commissions, they're vital to public entities in general, and particularly the city of Santa Barbara takes its boards and commission structure very seriously. I came to the city of Santa Barbara after clerking for a couple other cities that had 2 boards or 4 boards, or one had 7. I'm like, ooh, how excessive. And then I came to Santa Barbara and I found out we have over 40. And it's a really neat system. It is built in, it's baked into the system. Our charter provides for a number of boards, and the city really relies on this system of getting input from members of the community, be they persons with subject matter experience or living in particular neighborhoods or what have you. And in relation to that, we have so many boards and commissions, and each one is appointed for a particular reason. You are appointed for Parks and Recreation, you're not appointed for Harbor, you're not appointed for Planning, you're not appointed for the Living Wage Advisory Committee. Each board has their own purview, and we want to make sure that each board is providing guidance and advice within that particular purview. The council delegates advisory and decision-making authority to various boards and commissions. Again, the type of decisions you are making depends on which board you are. And as I said, each board has their own role and is providing guidance, particularly within that role. And the members, you guys, are representatives of the city. It can be intimidating to members of the public to come before boards, and particularly boards that meet here in council chambers. If you are not a person that comes before a board pretty often, if you have to come in, fill out a speaker slip, and stand at that podium and speak to 7 people that are sitting a little up higher than you, and you're calling them by these, terms like chair and commissioner, it can be challenging. As you are commissioners, you are representatives of the city, and we want to emphasize the importance of treating all the people who come before you with a fair and even demeanor. Some people will be experienced in coming before, some people will not. But you are acting as a representative of the city, and you're treating them all appropriately. Another role of the boards and commissions is to increase participation from various community interests, to engage the community, and to provide advice and expertise in your particular area. And again, to remain within that purview and the authority of your commission. If you're wondering, am I varying beyond the purview, absolutely check in with staff, check in with Director Zachary, and you can always remember the mayor sort of sitting on your shoulder saying, is this really your purview? And then you can always check with Ms. Zachary, and she can help you figure it out. In terms of conduct, the expectation is to conduct the city's business in a professional manner, to be a leader for civility and decorum. Again, once you're acting in your role as a commissioner, the expectation is that you will be professional at all times. Be welcoming of civic participation and engagement, and the general good practices for being in a meeting. Prepare in advance, read your packet. We put so much work into the packet. Sometimes my council packet, sometimes I think maybe everybody doesn't read all 500 pages, but Hopefully yours are a little bit shorter, but prepare, read your docs, stick to the agenda, stick to the Brown Act, and be respectful of each other's time up here on the dais. And that can come out in a couple different ways. It can mean don't talk over your colleagues. Make sure other colleagues have the opportunity to say what they need to say. And also, if you need to say something, then say it. Use your request to speak fancy button and make sure that your voice is heard if it's appropriate. And don't be distracted. Because that's so easy now that we all have the memory retention of a goldfish because of our phones. But you're here in council. Pay attention, put your phone away, and people particularly, I think, that they come before particular boards, and folks that are coming here for, street tree issues or one-off issues where they aren't professionals. They're coming because of a park near their home or an issue that affects their family or what have you. This is a big deal for them to come before the commission, so be respectful of their time while they're here. Ms. Reynoso.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Graciela Reynoso, and I'm the Human Resources Manager here at the city. Part of my role is to advocate and ensure a respectful and positive workplace culture. So that's why I'm here to talk to you today about some of the efforts that we take in assuring that we do have that positive culture. In your orientation packet, I'm sure you recall reading this document, which is Excellence in Customer Service Code of Conduct. There's also the organizational values, and these are statements that are an affirmation of the city's commitment to that professionalism Ms. Gorman was speaking about, and the conduct that helps ensure a respectful workplace and city culture as a city. So we've mentioned your representatives of the city, and as we're going through this training and staff training, we really like to come back to these values that we've established over the years to make sure that people are guided in a way that is positive for the organization. So again, the code of conduct would be basically following the golden rule, right? At the end of the day, it's very simple. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. Address the public in a respectful and patient manner. The same for staff that is before you and helping go through the process of commission meetings and everything of that sort. Treat others by practicing active and respectful listening. Monitor your tone of voice and body language. So a relatively unknown fact is that 70 to 90% of our communication is through our body language and our tone of voice, and actually not our word choice. So people are really looking for cues from how we're presenting, right? Am I presenting a welcoming body posture or tone of voice that is listening and active with another individual? So monitor your tone of voice and body language. Make a genuine effort to listen to divergent viewpoints. We handle a lot of issues, at the city, either through commissions or at the staff level sometimes, and we really want to be patient in listening to folks to make sure that we can kind of get through a problem-solving process or get to kind of the crux of the matter that might be at hand. And remember that it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. So practice that patience and inquiry to get to, through city business effectively. There's also a couple of documents, and we do a lot of training for staff on these, on this policy, which is a non-discrimination and harassment policy. Which also references this resolution that's listed here, 93-134. Both these documents are basically city affirmation of our attempt to really provide equality in the conduct of city business. So behavior that is contrary or disincentivizing for folks is behavior that we that we kind of frown upon, right? So the city policy on non-discrimination and anti-harassment means that we really want to establish a culture where people feel comfortable and respected. Part of that is, part of it is law, part of it is policy. So federal and state law does require that we train our supervisors and managers, and now all employees, in these tenets of equal opportunity and non-discrimination and harassment. And what the policy outlines is what we call protected classes or categories, which have to do with age and race, sexual orientation, gender identity, and many more. So items of that sort that have to do kind of with what your person is, and any behavior that is targeting a protected category is often considered to be illegal and definitely against policy. So I like to talk to employees and boards and commissions about our process and our commitment to really affirming that we are a workplace that is welcoming to all. There's the policy that we have for harassment and discrimination is more legalistic, but there is this new trend to kind of address and work against what we call abusive conduct. So abusive conduct can also be called bullying. That is when we don't watch our tone of voice and we don't watch our body language and we yell at people, belittle people, or use a condescending tone of voice, right? Typical bullying behavior. So we want to avoid using this type of behavior, obviously, in conduct of city business, because the effects of abusive conduct are that the individual who it's targeted to feels either dismissed or kind of deselects from a process that they're vested in, and it silences, intimidates, and shames others. So the city really advocates for, obviously, for not bullying folks so that people have an opportunity to have access to the services that we offer, either, to the larger community as a city or within our organization to employees as well. I think I'm turning it over back to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Chair McGill. And rest of commission, as I always say, but in this case, talking a little bit about the role of the chair. So the chair sets the welcoming tone to staff, to the public, to the rest of the board. The chair is responsible for the order of the meeting and conducting it in a fair and efficient manner. And to this last point that the chair can call a short recess when needed, it's just something to remember and kind of keep in your back pocket, that if things, and I don't necessarily know that this is a Parks and Recreation Commission issue, but it could happen in lots of places. If things are getting a little rough in the meeting, it is almost always okay to say, okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess or we're going to take a 10-minute recess. It can be a really nice way to take down the tenor of a conversation, particularly if public comments are getting heated or there's yelling or things are happening where you want to calm the room down a little bit. We want to encourage the idea of taking a short break, and generally that can reset the tone in a room. And in general, if things get a little hard and hairy in this room, you can just remember this lovely slide and this beautiful sunset picture. But generally, we would ask you to conduct yourself as you would anyway, as a representative of the city, being courteous and welcoming of others' opinions. And we're available for questions. I told you it wasn't very long.
I thought we were warming up. All right, thank you very much. It's always a great reminder of things that we know, but sometimes it's great to be reminded. I think with all the boards that I've touched in various ways, the purview one is difficult because one thing, people are curious. you know, it's kind of like, well, what, you know, how does this affect this, affect this, affect this? And everybody wants to be engaged, and it's a good reminder that we all have, you know, a box that we need to stay in with these boards and commissions. Does anybody have any questions, comments? No? I think.
Thank you very
that's
much.
that. Thank you so much. That was it. So we are adjourned with the next meeting, end of June. Thank you very much, everyone.